In a shadowed room filled with the faint clang of metal hands being assembled, a voice cried out in pain. On the bed sat a wounded boy, gripping his side with anger burning in his eyes as he vowed through clenched teeth to wipe out every one of his enemies. Then the story moved to the Demon Lord's fortress, where steel rang in a chaotic rhythm as 6 heroes fought with everything they had. In the middle of the clash, a female warrior shouted in irritation that the Demon Lord was right in front of them, but the others were already struggling and urged everyone to fall back. Hearing her voice, the main hero suddenly understood something and called out to Aikido-sama. She answered that they would take care of the guards while he focused solely on the Demon Lord. With a firm nod, he rushed forward as the demon laughed at him. A burst of light followed, and the hero's sword ignited with energy. Bracing himself, he whispered an apology before driving the blade into the demon. The demon screamed in disbelief at his defeat before fading away. Breathing hard, the hero stayed on his feet as his teammates ran to him, the girl calling out his name. He paused, then smiled and said they had finally won and the world could know peace again. A month later in the holy capital, a banquet held in a guest mansion marked the 5th day of the hero's celebration. Dropping onto a sofa, Aikido groaned about how tiring the endless events had become just as someone set a glass down nearby. When he looked up, he almost spoke her name before she introduced herself as Flora, saintess of the holy nation among the 5 great countries. She joked that she never expected the hero who cleared Pale Peak in a week to be worn out by simple festivities. Kao muttered that he hated formal gatherings. Leaning over the sofa, she reminded him that once tomorrow's joint victory ceremony ended, he would finally be free, offering him an encouraging smile. He nodded just as laughter echoed and his companions walked in, one of them calling him Big Brother and telling him to stay positive. Aikido answered with warmth, reminding them all that they were the legendary heroes who saved the world. The speaker, Juan Zilong from the Martial Nation, admitted he wasn't fond of ceremonies either. Doug from the Magic Nation, Marija, noted how much Aikido had done for their victory, while Shinamani Nagi of the Eastern Nation, Muashashi, commented on how remarkable Aikido's solo fight with the Demon Lord had been. Aikido answered humbly, saying it wasn't his power alone and that he never could have finished the battle without them. When Garen Rudolph from the military empire Jia arrived, Aikido greeted him and asked why he kept insisting no thanks were necessary. Garen explained that they had only carried out their duty, but Aikido still told him how grateful he was to have met them all. Standing up, he thanked the entire group, and they returned his smile. Later, the atmosphere softened as Flora helped a cheerful, slightly drunk Aikido walk, while Juan teased him about not being able to handle alcohol. Shinamani scolded him for drinking too much while enjoying the local brew. Still wobbling, Aikido told Flora not to fuss and assured her that tomorrow didn't matter. She answered confidently that she would wake up on time. When Aikido suddenly asked what everyone planned to do after the ceremony, the room grew quiet. Garen said he would return home to help rebuild his empire. Shinamani intended to retire and pursue research. Doug hoped to spread his martial arts across the continent. Another member would return to the church, and Flora said she would also go back. When the group asked about his own plans, Aikido paused. He thought about how he was reincarnated, how his parents were gone, and how he had no place to return to. At last, he said he would simply wander. On the day of the ceremony, inside the waiting room of a vast cathedral, he asked Flora why he had to wear such ornate clothing. She reminded him that this was a major event meant to show the unity of the 5 great nations and the peace he had helped create. With a reluctant sigh, Aikido let her finish preparing him. When he asked how valuable the armor was, she explained that it was made from national treasures worth as much as an entire country's budget and warned him not to damage any part of it. Inside the cathedral, crowds chanted and celebrated the holy envoy and God's messenger. Confused, Aikido whispered to Flora, asking who they meant. She told him it was him, leaving him stunned. She reassured him that it was only ceremonial and asked him to endure it for the day. As they continued forward, Aikido quietly said that once everything was over, he would say his farewells. He called out to Flora, hesitated, and brought up their earlier talk about his future. He explained that he had thought about it all night and decided he wanted to travel the world to help anyone still in need, and hoped she would come with him. A soft smile appeared on his face as he accepted his new goal, using his strength to help anyone who needed it. Flora asked if it would be odd for her to travel with him, hope lingering in her voice. Then she smiled and said she believed his new dream was a wonderful one. The heavy doors to the ceremonial hall opened, announcing their entrance. Inside, Aikido stopped in shock at the sight of countless robed figures lining the vast chamber. Flora explained that these were holy representatives from across the world, gathered solely for this event. She guided him toward the center of a wide circular platform inlaid in the floor. Aikido stepped onto it, uneasy, told to remain still as he glanced at the many silent witnesses. His other female companion stepped forward, questioning why the ceremony needed to be so grand before giving the signal to begin. The robed figures started their chant, and a glowing magic circle lit up beneath Aikido's feet. In an instant, chains of light burst from the seal, wrapping around him and holding him in place. Shocked, he struggled against them, unable to move an inch. Realizing he had walked into a powerful magical trap, he tried to call out to Flora, only to see her standing quietly nearby. The holy priestess Flora lifted her head with a cold, triumphant smile, her gentle demeanor gone. Aikido stared at her in disbelief, betrayed by the person he had begun to trust. She spoke down to him, noting that his strength was impressive even while bound by artifacts forged from national treasures. His thoughts spun as he tried to understand why the hero who saved the world was being restrained like a criminal. Flora answered before he could form the words. His power, she said, was exactly what made him so terrifying to them. Her expression hardened into something cruel as she confirmed his worst fears, leaving no room for hope that this was anything less than real. Held in place by the glowing chains, Aikido could only watch as Flora's shadow stood above him, confirming the harsh truth he didn't want to face. Even his trusted warrior companion, Garen Aldolf, spoke without emotion, saying that this betrayal was simply Aikido's fate. Garen went on to state coldly that Aikido had grown far too strong. A high official added that his power threatened to break the political balance of the entire world. Nagisa, another of his companions, explained with a grim tone that they could not allow such instability. Garen then revealed that all 5 great nations had joined forces with a single purpose to remove the hero. Aikido looked around the hall in despair, seeing every one of his former allies standing against him. He demanded an answer, but they repeated that his unmatched strength had become a danger they could no longer ignore. Bound and betrayed, his face twisted with rising fury and disbelief. He turned to Flora, asking if she had truly betrayed him as well. She paused as if considering it, then broke into a bright, unsettling smile as she confirmed it without hesitation. Driven by raw anger, Aikido released a surge of power that burst through the magic circle. The shock was so strong that one of the holy men collapsed under the pressure. The entire group of mages staggered while Garen stared at Aikido in shock, unable to believe the force he was witnessing. Before Aikido could break free completely, Nagisa struck him with a heavy blow, stopping his attempt to escape. The blast sent the hero flying off the platform, and he fell hard toward the cathedral floor. He struck the stone with enough force to leave a wide crater. Lying in the debris, Aikido stared upward in a daze, his body battered and his spirit nearly gone. Above him, Nagisa watched with casual interest, noting how durable he still was, while the rest of his former companions observed without emotion. Through his fading vision, he saw the group discussing his fate as if he were already gone, their betrayal now complete. An official stepped forward and revealed their true purpose to extract Aikido's power using an artifact that would seal it inside a ring. When another questioned whether such a feat was even possible, Garen Aldolf replied that, at least in theory, it was. A high priest moved ahead, instructing everyone to keep their distance as he prepared the ritual. Forming a series of hand signs, he activated a powerful forging spell. Heavy chains of magic broke through the floor and wrapped tightly around Aikido's fallen form. A burning heat surged through him as the chains began to glow brighter. Their grip intensified, pulling a dark, concentrated energy straight from his body. Aikido screamed as the artifact drew out his very life force. Nagisa watched in shock, stunned, that a technique capable of stealing someone's power truly existed. Garen Aldolf looked down coldly, calling the hero's condition pitiful and tragic. Aikido's final cry echoed through the hall as he realized he had been nothing but a disposable tool. A sharp, tearing pain ripped through him as the ritual violently stripped away the last of his essence. As morning light breaks, the grim ritual ends, leaving the floor cracked and a single ring resting at the center. The artifact now pulses with the hero's stolen power, its surface flickering with unstable energy. Flora calmly discusses Aikido's disposal with Garen Aldolf, who now carries the ring holding the strength Aikido once wielded. Stripped of everything, Aikido releases a silent scream filled with rage and betrayal. In his mind, he relives every sacrifice he made for humanity, only to understand he was nothing more than a hero meant to be cast aside. Tears fall as he wonders how those he trusted could be so cruel. Flora dismisses his pain without hesitation, calling his suffering a necessary price for maintaining peace. His remaining companions watch him with either firm resolve or icy detachment. Bound and helpless, Aikido glares at them, his eyes burning with hatred. He declares that all 5 nations that turned on him are now his enemies. Flora laughs at his defiance, while Garen Eld gives the order for Nagisa to finish the job. Nagisa unsheathes her blade and steps toward him, wishing she could make his final moments even harsher. As her sword falls, Aikido's expression shifts, moving from despair to a sudden, startling realization. A low, unsettling laugh slipped from Aikido's lips, leaving his former companions frozen in confusion. Flora wondered aloud if the pain had finally driven him mad, but his laughter only grew sharper. With a twisted smile, he announced that he had found one part of his body he could still move. A sudden, massive surge of energy burst from the fallen hero, catching everyone off guard. His old allies stared in shock as they realized he was forcing his own internal magic into a wild, unstable state. Garen Aldolf's expression tightened as he understood the desperate plan Aikido had chosen. The hero shouted that if he was going down, he would drag every one of his betrayers with him. The cathedral began to crack apart as panic spread through the group. A devastating explosion tore through the sacred hall, destroying it in an instant. The ring holding Aikido's stolen power was blasted high into the air as the shockwave rolled outward, strong enough to shake the capital itself. When the dust finally settled, the once grand cathedral had been reduced to a smoking crater. From the wreckage, a towering armored figure rose, its size dwarfing the traitors who had survived. The towering figure stepped into view, revealed to be Garen Elf, now strengthened by the glowing ring on his hand. He smirked, untouched by the blast, having used the ring's power to shield himself. Garen remarked on the sheer force Aikido unleashed, then exhaled in relief that their plan had still succeeded. Flora glanced at the surviving traitors and questioned why they looked so grim when their objective had already been achieved. With the hero gone, one of the companions eagerly suggested they settle who among them deserved the title of the world's strongest. The others reacted with anger, knowing such a fight would immediately throw the world into another devastating conflict. Declaring their alliance complete, Flora announced she was returning to her empire. She offered a final, empty blessing for the world's future, confirming the hero was gone for good. Later, the traitors delivered a public speech, spreading the false story that Aikido had died in a noble act of sacrifice. But hidden in the crowds, many of the people he once saved refused to believe the tale they were being told. In a small wooden house, a young girl carried 2 water buckets, calling out that she was heading to Fetcha. Her master told her to stay alert. When she reached the river and began filling the buckets, she grumbled about the strange explosion from the previous day until she noticed a body lying under the trees. Letting out a scream, she yelled for her master. Someone was out there, and this marked the beginning of Aikido's revenge. Aikido remained trapped in a flashback, crying out as voices echoed around him, someone insisting they had all agreed to take Big Bro Aikido down, another declaring that too much power becomes evil, Garen claiming everything had been for the Empire, and Doug murmuring that this was simply fate. Aikido listened in disbelief, remembering their journey together and the battles they fought side by side. He couldn't understand why they had turned on him or how it had come to this. Reaching out with a shaking hand toward Flora, he called her name, begging her to tell him it wasn't true. He stammered that he had truly cared for her. Flora turned toward him with a cold smirk, and his heart sank as she said, "Poor Aikido-sama. To think you never realized we were using you from the very beginning." His eyes filled with tears as he realized he could never forgive them. They had used him, taken everything from him, and left him with nothing. He repeated his vow. All 5 nations' Astrads were now his enemies. No matter the cost, he would take revenge. He shouted that he would kill them all, and the force of that rage jolted him awake. Breathing hard, he scanned the unfamiliar room in confusion. "What the hell? Where am I? What is this place?" he whispered. Seeing himself lying in a bed, he muttered in disbelief that he was still alive. He tried to rise, but his body wouldn't respond, and even his own voice sounded strange to him. A girl peeked nervously through the doorway, whispered a startled curse, and rushed downstairs. She shouted to her master that he was awake and in pain. The master answered that the effects of the medicine must have worn off. Both hurried back into the room, the master holding him down while instructing the girl to give him more medicine. She acknowledged the order and tried to get him to drink it. Aikido struggled to swallow the bitter dose, panic running through his thoughts, wondering what was happening, where he was, and who these people could be. When they finished, he coughed hard, gasping as the master noted that he seemed to be settling down at last. As the medicine began to take effect, Aikido's strained breathing eased, though his eyes stayed wide with shock. In a weak voice, he questioned the 2 strangers, asking who they were, where he had ended up, and how long he'd been unconscious. A sudden clarity washed over him as the impossible truth of his survival. The young woman snapped at him for speaking so sharply, saying he should at least be thankful they had saved him. The old man calmly added that they assumed he was someone important because of the high quality, though damaged, clothes he had been wearing. Aikido quietly absorbed the fact that these strangers had rescued him when he had nothing left. The man introduced himself as Crest and the girl as Iris. Aikido offered a faint apology. Crest said they could help him contact any family or acquaintances who might come for him. Iris added that he could stay until he recovered, but would be expected to leave once he was well again. Crest's patience began to fade as he asked how long Aikido planned to rely on their kindness, and the moment grew tense. His expression sharpened when he saw Aikido start to grasp that something was seriously wrong. Iris looked confused as Crest chose to reveal the harsh truth sooner rather than later. Aikido demanded to know what they were hiding, but Iris's attempt to calm him was abruptly cut short. A cold understanding settled over Aikido as he looked down at his bandaged body. His breath caught when he realized the space where his arms should have been was empty. The truth struck him hard. His limbs were gone. Crest explained with a heavy tone that removing them had been the only way to keep him alive after the extent of his injuries. Crushed by the revelation, Aikido broke down as Crest told Iris to hold him steady. He struggled helplessly, begging for someone to tell him it wasn't real. His thoughts spun wildly as he tried to grasp how he had survived the explosion, only to end up like this. Memories of the ritual flashed through his mind, the chains, the magic, the draining force, and he finally understood what had happened to him. He stared at the bandaged stumps where his limbs once were, the reality tightening around him. His body shook with grief and revulsion as he collapsed inward. Iris watched with sympathy while Crest's face remained firm and unreadable. Hanging his head, Aikido whispered questions about why he was left to endure something so cruel. He realized that in this condition, he could neither return to a normal life nor carry out the revenge he had sworn. Tears streamed down his face as he begged them to end his life. Crest erupted in anger, shouting that Aikido had no right to discard the life he had fought so desperately to preserve. The old man warned him not to look down on those who still lived whole lives, then struck him sharply across the face, trying to pull him out of his despair. Crest seized Aikido's face in both hands, his voice thundering through the room as he barked that Aikido was still alive, that as long as he drew breath, he had no right to surrender. Iris gently replaced the old man's grip with her own, cradling Aikido's face with trembling hands. Her eyes softened, pleading with him not to throw away the life they had. The 2 sets of voices, one harsh and one gentle, finally began to break through the fog of despair. Aikido stared at the ruined shape of his body, whispering in disbelief as he wondered what life could possibly remain for someone like him. Then a thought struck him. A workshop. His gaze drifted downward to Crest's leg. Not flesh, but metal and magic woven seamlessly together. Crest noticed his stare and grinned with pride as he tapped the intricately crafted prosthetic. He introduced his life's work, magical prosthetics, a craft born out of necessity. He explained how the continent had been locked in war ever since the Demon King's army first struck. As spells and weapons grew more devastating, soldiers survived battles with injuries that would once have been fatal, missing limbs, shattered, but the war demanded manpower. The rulers demanded solutions, and so magical prosthetics were created, devices designed to turn crippled survivors into functional, battle-ready soldiers once again. Crest, with no small amount of pride, declared himself the foremost master of the craft. Aikido listened, stunned, when Crest demonstrated how the limb responded purely to will, no runes, no incantations, just intent. The implications crashed into him all at once. In his mind, he saw himself standing again, walking, fighting, hunting down the 5 nations who betrayed him. A spark of hope ignited in the ashes of his despair, then erupted into a blazing inferno. Realizing his story wasn't finished, he lifted his head and asked the question that would decide the course of his future. "Can you make me new limbs?" Aikido's question hung in the air, whether 4 magical prosthetic limbs could truly let him move freely. The reaction was explosive. Iris immediately yelled, "No way! Absolutely not!" Her voice cracked with disbelief as she launched into a frantic explanation. Magitech limbs weren't simple tools. They ran on mana, demanded delicate control, and even operating one required intense focus and strength. Controlling 4 at once? She insisted it was beyond insane. People with a single prosthetic often struggled for months. Some with 2 ended up bedridden because the limbs drained their mana just by existing. 4 would kill most people. Crest's expression softened into a pained grimace. He added that the cost alone would be monstrous. 4 limbs would be a small nation's ransom. They simply didn't have the means to cover it. Aikido listened quietly. Then he shifted his gaze toward the accessories sitting by his bedside: rings, amulets, fragments of equipment carried over from his days as a hero. Even battered, they radiated faint traces of ancient power. He told them to sell everything. Iris's jaw dropped. She sputtered in disbelief, asking if he was joking, if he truly understood what he was saying. Aikido raised his voice not out of anger, but desperation, declaring that he still had something he had to do, something only he could accomplish. His eyes burned with purpose, leaving no room for doubt. Both Crest and Iris stared at him in astonishment. After a long, heavy silence, Crest exhaled deeply, rubbing his forehead. "Fine," he muttered, resigned, yet strangely moved. "I get it," Iris exploded. "Master, are you out of your mind?" Crest sat beside the bed, his tone calm and unshakable. "Iris, we saved him. That means we're involved now, like it or not." She tried to argue, but he pressed on gently. "If he understands the risk and still wants this, then it means something. Something we can't ignore." Iris's face twisted, fear, anger, empathy, all clashing at once. She looked at Aikido, remembering the broken, blood-soaked body she had dragged home, remembering how he clung to life with nothing but rage and sorrow. He declared firmly, without hesitation, that his mind was made up. Iris clenched her fists, trembling. "Fine, fine, whatever," she finally shouted, cheeks flushed with defiant emotion. Then she jabbed a finger at him, adding with a fierce scowl, "I'll help too. Since I'm the idiot who found you, I'll take responsibility." And with that, Aikido's path to rebirth and revenge began to take shape. Aikido smiled and agreed, saying the offer seemed fair. The master opened the door, paused for a moment, and told them everything was settled. He left the preparations in their hands, but reminded them the process would be difficult. Aikido met his eyes and said he was ready. Iris called out, asking for his name, frustrated that they were helping someone they still didn't know. He gave an awkward grin and apologized, explaining that his name was Aikido. She returned a small smile, glad to finally hear it, and Kree's promised they would do everything possible, asking him to place his trust in them as well. Aikido nodded, thanked them, and the surgery to attach the Magitech limbs began. With special plugs installed, a Mona circuit could be created, letting the limbs detach or swap out easily, making repairs simple when a part failed. First, metal fittings were placed into the injured areas so the Magitech limbs could be attached. They couldn't use any anesthesia, but he pushed through the pain. In time, fittings were secured on all 4 limbs to lower the chance of rejection, and they worked on each limb one at a time. The first stage went well. Crest studied the new arm and told Aikido to try moving the training prosthetic. Sitting on a couch, Aikido nodded as Crest explained the plan. Start with the right arm, then get used to the right leg, followed by the left leg, and finally, the left arm. After that, they would begin full-body coordination training. He quickly realized that turning his whole body into Magitech parts was more difficult than he expected. When he asked how to move the limb, Crest told him that each motion required directing mana into the matching pseudo-nerve, since the prosthetics worked through those channels. Aikido closed his eyes, admitting Crest was right, feeling a faint link between himself and the new arm. Iris watched as Crest told him to start with one finger and use only a small amount of mana. Aikido concentrated, pictured the movement, and in an instant, his entire arm shot back, slamming into the wall and tearing open a huge hole. Aikido and Iris can only stare at the massive crater carved into the forest. Aikido studies his arm in disbelief, since he meant to move only a single finger. Crest is taken aback by the blast, realizing Aikido carries an extremely unstable amount of mana. Iris holds him back as the practice arm sparks with wild energy. Crest watches closely, trying to understand what kind of person carries such impossible power. The training arm lies shattered on the ground, showing how completely Aikido failed to control his strength. The old man explains that no normal prosthetic could ever survive mana like his. Crest promises to make a new custom arm, but Aikido will have to cover the costs and the damage done to the shop. Iris brings him food, her expression caught between sympathy and irritation at the long struggle ahead. Aikido meets the moment with a steady glare, accepting the hard truth of his new training. He refuses her help, pride clashing with the reality that he can barely function on his own. Outside, a storm churns while another kind of suffering builds inside him. Aikido twists in bed, overwhelmed by sharp phantom pain where his limbs used to be. The sensation is a cruel illusion, untouched by any medicine. With no cure in sight, he fights through the agony, cursing each wave of pain. But instead of giving in, he pushes the torment into his growing need for revenge. Hearing his strained cries, Iris realizes they must speed up the surgery. A year later, after repeated operations and harsh training, Aikido finally rises on a pair of prosthetic legs. Aikido's first attempt to walk ends in complete failure, drawing the reaction Iris expected. As she scolds him for pushing too hard, he explains he's only trying to learn how to handle his new body. When they help him back to his feet, Iris keeps lecturing him, questioning why he's rushing so much. While eating, Aikido finally admits why he's only 17. The revelation leaves Iris stunned, since he's younger than she is. She tells him she was also an orphan, taken in by Crest. Aikido admits that staying with them is the first time he's ever had people around him, and that he's starting to enjoy their company. Iris blushes at the quiet confession, realizing he's brought something new into her life as well. Aikido becomes flustered by her sudden gratitude, unsure why the mood has shifted. Time moves on, and Aikido spends season after season adjusting his prosthetics and enduring intense training under Crest's guidance. 4 years later, Iris calls out to him in an open field, ready for his next test. She tosses a basket of eggs high into the sky, challenging him to catch every one or skip dinner. Aikido stands still beneath him, fully focused as he reads each falling arc. Then he springs into motion, his custom limbs moving faster than the eye can follow. With precise timing, he catches every egg before any can reach the ground. Aikido snatches the eggs from the air with flawless precision, his hands moving so fast they blur. With sharp concentration, he holds each fragile shell steady, showing full control over his powerful limbs. Iris watches in disbelief as he stands there with a full basket, but she spots one egg slipping by. Aikido lunges to save it, only to stumble at the last moment. Even so, both Iris and Crest are impressed, praising the skill he shows despite wearing basic training gear. Aikido thinks about how far he's come. noting that using his new body feels like moving from a simple controller to a complex arcade setup with far more options. Iris is still amazed he managed it all without breaking a single egg. When Aikido confidently asks for his real prosthetics, Crest agrees, deciding he's ready to move past practice. He reveals a high-performance custom build and instructs Iris to begin the final installation. Aikido flexes his new combat-grade hand, his expression tightening with satisfaction. The surge of power catches him off guard, leaving him stunned by what the new limbs can do. Crest wastes no time and throws a heavy stone block his way. Aikido not only catches it, he crushes it with ease, leaving Iris speechless. Pleased with the results, Crest hands over the last tuning steps to a confused Iris. He explains this stage needs a connection stronger than family, and she's the only one who truly understands Aikido. The words land hard, leaving Iris red-faced and stumbling over her response. As Crest playfully teases the embarrassed pair, Aikido looks down at his hand, thinking back on the 4 long years it took to reach this point. With his strength finally restored, his thoughts return to the comrades who betrayed him, and his resolve for revenge settles even deeper. Months pass, and the story moves to a new city where his hunt will begin. With Crest stuck in bed with a cold, Aikido and Iris head out to handle errands. Iris tries to lighten the moment by pointing out a food stall, but Aikido brushes it off as something trivial. His confidence fades when Iris directs his attention to a statue in the town square, an exact likeness of who he used to be. He's shocked to discover a hero cult built around him, a group convinced he transcended mortality. A hooded stranger approaches, offering more information about the cult and its reach across all 5 major nations. He explains that after Aikido unified the world to defeat the Demon King, the nations slipped back into petty disputes. With their focus lost, the border regions have turned into wild, ungoverned areas filled with monsters. Aikido realizes that during his recovery, the world he fought to protect has slowly unraveled. Their quiet moment ends abruptly as a monster horde appears where none should exist. As Iris locks up in fear, Aikido's instincts surge to the front, instantly recognizing how deadly the situation is. He grabs her without hesitation and leaps toward the workshop. Iris clings to him, trembling, while Aikido's face hardens with complete focus. His fear deepens when they arrive to find the workshop already overrun, and his thoughts race toward Crest's safety. Aikido tears into the horde, crushing a creature and cursing himself for reacting too late. As he studies the chaos, a chilling certainty forms in his mind. This wasn't random. It was a strike orchestrated by the 5 great nations. Their relief is brief. They find Crest gravely wounded, barely able to whisper that their enemies have erased their very identities from the world. The shock sends Iris into a spiral, triggering memories she's tried for years to bury. She relives the moment she was abandoned and breaks down, begging her master not to leave her. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Aikido stands alone before a simple grave marked only by Crest's tools. The old man's journey has come to an end. Aikido stands over the simple grave, his grief tightening into a steady, unyielding resolve. His mind returns to Crest's final moments, the old man refusing help, fully aware his time had run out. He remembers Iris's frantic attempt to fetch medicine, unwilling to accept the loss of her master. Crest had coughed through the pain, more worried about being seen in such a weakened state than about himself. Aikido feels a surge of guilt, wondering if his presence drew this tragedy to their door. But Crest had corrected him, placing the blame on the 5 great nations for letting the monsters roam free. Aikido's thoughts are broken by the mysterious man, who admits he saw the look of an avenger in Aikido's eyes from the beginning. Aikido's gaze narrows, carrying the same fierce intensity he showed the first day they met. The man had armed him for the path ahead, certain Aikido's quest for vengeance would ignite a blaze that could swallow entire nations. Aikido recalls Crest's last instructions, trusting them to carry on his work if he ever fell. He tightens his fist, accepting that his course is now fixed, and nothing will turn him back. His final memory of Crest lingers a plea for Aikido to watch over the apprentice he left behind. Aikido had assured his dying master that he owed both him and Iris everything, urging Crest to rest without regret. That promise now hardens into a vow colder than grief. He will have his revenge, no matter the cost. In the present, Aikido turns to the mourning Iris beside the grave and tells her he has something to confess. She recoils, stunned by the harshness of his words. He calmly confirms what she fears most: he has revealed the full truth of his past. Iris refuses to believe he could deceive her, insisting that after 4 years at his side, she knows he isn't a liar. When she asks about his next move, Aikido's thoughts flash to the comrades who betrayed him. He declares he will track them down and make them repay what they owe. He tells Iris he cannot remain with her, but she immediately pushes back, insisting she will go with him. Aikido is caught off guard by her determination as she reminds him the real threat lies in opposing all 5 nations. His mind flickers back to the moment she pointed out that only she could make the final adjustments to his limbs. He recalls the long design sessions where her skill turned his ideas from another world into working mechanisms. Iris presses the point, asking how he plans to maintain his gear on such a long and brutal journey. Faced with her reasoning and his promise to Crest, Aikido can only grip his head in frustration. Once he finally relents, Iris proudly declares it's time to prepare for the road ahead. Back at the damaged workshop, he agrees to take her along but warns her not to act rashly. Iris fires back, reminding him how expensive his equipment is and that he isn't allowed to die. She begs him not to throw himself into danger, and her honesty finally breaks through his defenses. Aikido studies her closely, realizing she now has no one else to depend on. He tells her plainly that she's terrible at hiding her true feelings. Then he reassures her that he has no intention of dying, not until every debt is settled. He adds another promise, vowing never to leave her to face the world alone. Overwhelmed, Iris taps him lightly on the chest, surprising him. Through her tears, she accepts his words as a promise she'll hold him to. Aikido remembers his last talk with Crest and the vow he made to protect the old man's apprentice. His eyes sharpen with determination, confirming his resolve to keep Iris safe no matter what. With their pact set, they finish gathering supplies for the long road ahead. Before departing, Aikido opens a hidden compartment, knowing they must hide his true identity during their travels. He then reveals their first destination, the Fire Nation's capital, Rakuyu, where they will track down one of the 5 heroes. A grim smile forms as he names Sharon as their first target, while Iris lights up with excitement for the mission ahead. With their purpose clear, the two set off on their long, dangerous path of vengeance. Aikido reflects that his wish to see the world now carries a darker intent, shared with a companion who refuses to leave his side. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay tuned for the next part.